Facebook is going, and now my IG is gonna go. All right, and there we are. Okay, so this is a really special conversation to me because we're here with my good friend Jeanine Staples, who we've known each other for a little while now. I had the distinct pleasure of mentoring you, which is such a humbling honor during advanced leadership, and I was always so blown away, Jeanine. I mean, you're a world leading expert on the topic of the current state of national affairs right now. Like, this is literally what you do at a very advanced, very well educated level. And I remembered there were conversations you and I had during leadership, like very deep conversations where we addressed like very real topics,
Yeah.
very intense topics, confronting topics. And the thing that really struck me about you, Jeanine, is just how very like, I mean, these are topics that people feel rage about. You feel rage about. I'm learning and I'm feeling rage about. But at the time, I didn't understand. And you deal with that on a day-to-day basis. And yet, you're come from, like, you are so well articulated in the way that you
Mhm.
communicate about it. And I got it. Like, I started to really get it. And
Yeah.
your energy is so grounded. And the way that you are able to communicate just blows me away. Like, you're literally one of the smartest people I know. And so I'm really grateful that you're taking the time with us today, that you said yes to this conversation. It's a very complicated scenario. Like, as you and I were kind of talking about it just now and what we want to focus on, it's like, gosh, it's so complicated. And so on Facebook, we address that in the title. And what we want to talk about today is, I mean, I wanted to talk to Jeanine anyway, and I just wanted to kind of bring more people into the conversation because I thought that'd be beneficial. So, we were kind of talking about a few different ways to address this. And Jeanine, based on what we talked about, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you lead the way and just like really provide this as a platform for you to share. And I'll ask a few questions in between.
Okay. So I'd like to say hi to everybody on IG. You can't see, but I'm speaking to Julie Surratt right now in a Facebook Live. She is the Dharma Queen. She's a world-class coach and has been trained extensively in leadership. And she invited me to come on and just share some of my views around what's going on in the world. And we're calling this a conversation to start unpacking some of the tensions that are erupting in the world right now. When there's a big catastrophic boom and there is just a mess everywhere, a lot of times people are looking at the pile of debris that's left from the explosion and don't know how to get to work. There's this confusion about, like, where do I start? I think one of the most important things that we can ground with, it's like crucial concept for us to do any sort of justice work, is that if we come with a particular concept around mess, then we can actually do the work without too much investment in overwhelm, that concept of overwhelm. And so what I say is come into the mess and say, if I see a mess, I am primed for a miracle. That's a bottom line. And I know it sounds cliche and it might sound a little Pollyannish, but it's very, very true. What I've learned as a Black woman, scholar, educator, activist, and coach is that going into a messy, contradictory, complicated set of energies is usually a treasure trove. If we can go in with that attitude, we can be available and open to revelation. And revelation is available right now. Revelation about two sort of levels of consciousness, your interior life and your exterior life. So I think maybe one thing that I'd like to start with is the idea that the social justice work that's available to us now, that we can see with our naked eye in our exterior life, is preceded by emotional justice work that takes place in our interior life. And those two things work in tandem. What that means is if you are signing petitions, if you are marching, if you are protesting, if you're making signs, if you are doing voter registration, all of those are social justice projects. They're incredibly valuable. If you are running for the school board, if you're running for representative or Congress, if you are writing letters, all social justice work, all super crucial, all super important. Notice though, that work happens in your exterior life. It happens in the material world. It's concrete, it's physical, it's something that we can measure. It's something that we can document and create artifacts around. Like you can make a constitution, you can make a map, you can make a sign or a billboard. Those are all social justice work signifiers. So that's good work to do. What I would say to everyone watching is that any sort of impetus or instinct that you feel towards any level of social justice work must be tied to emotional justice work in order for that social justice project to stick and to have legs and to be entrenched and to actually bear meaningful effect. And so I think I'd like to talk about emotional justice. I think that emotional justice work, which is the foundation of my research, is incredibly important. And I could talk for hours about it. And so I get to like funnel and focus right now so that I can be of service to community. Does that sound like a good start, Julie?
That's great. I've never heard that term before, so I'm really eager to learn more about what that means.
Yeah. So I have very simple definitions for social justice and emotional justice that can really carry a person through a crisis like what we're experiencing right now. So social justice means to take seriously the exterior life of every person. And on Instagram or Facebook, wherever you are, I'd really encourage you to write down some of the terms that we go over and that we craft here, because I'm going to throw some terms at you to make sure that, you know, we can be in the same conversation. If we're talking similar language, then we can converse. So social justice means to take seriously the exterior life of every person. By definition, social justice has to do with everything you can see and touch and taste and feel in your world. So social justice is taking seriously the fact that some children do not have decent health care. Social justice is taking seriously that some elderly people of color are purged from voting polls in the South. Social justice work is about noticing that there are teachers in impoverished areas who are not resourced and empowered to do their job, to do their work. That's exterior life. It's taking that very seriously. It's not making light of it. It's not passing it off. It's not diminishing. It's taking it seriously. Emotional justice work is the counterbalance. So emotional justice means to take seriously the interior life of every person. That's the balance. Social justice is about exterior life. Emotional justice is about interior life. So when I talk about emotional justice, what I am advocating for, what I am standing for, is that each individual person does the development of a personal liberation project. A personal liberation project is a key enterprise for your consciousness. Each personal liberation project is unique, it's specific, it's distinct. It's all about decolonizing your soul. That's essentially what it is. It means taking the scaffolds and the blinders off of your consciousness. That's your liberation. So there are a range of liberation projects you can create to do emotional justice work for yourself. If you know, for example, that you repress your anger or your rage, create some liberation around that. If you know that you struggle with anxiety and you have panic attacks, if you're touchy and nervous and fretful, create a liberation project around that. If you know, for example, like I knew Julie from back in the day, I used to be a liar. I was an emotional liar. I didn't tell the truth about anything that I was thinking or feeling. Everything in my interior life, I would mask and hide. I needed liberation around that. I needed to decolonize my soul. And so the question is, how do I do decolonizing? Like, where do I even start with that? It's all about corralling your thoughts and your feelings at the deepest level. So what we see on the news right now, wherever you're getting your information, if you're getting it from TV, if you're getting it from YouTube, if you're getting it from Instagram, if you're getting it from Facebook, if you're getting it from Twitter, there is an onslaught of information that is sparking feelings and thoughts in you. That's where you start. Write down your questions, write down your concerns, write down your complaints, write down your criticisms, put it all on paper. And here's what I would offer, Julie: be honest. Be honest. And I would say, do not put it on a post for the world. Your emotional justice work is private and personal. At first, in the beginning, it's for you. Ideally, it's for you and your coach. Like, ideally, it's for you and the person that you're looking to for mentorship and for advocacy and for inspiration, education, edification. If you don't have a coach, get a coach. And if you do have a coach, let the coach know you're creating a personal liberation project. The first thing you do is notice your thoughts and feelings and document. Document with transparency, document with compassion, document with consistency, put it all on paper. And I mean, literally put it all out on paper. Like, I think those people are savages. And I think that they are animals. And I think that they are getting everything that's come to them. And I wish that they would be restrained. Ooh. Document it. Document it. Or, I feel so hopeless and I feel so helpless and I don't know what to do and I feel useless and small and scared. I want to hide. Document it. Write that down. Literally put it down on paper. Create a collection of evidence around your inner life and then do so without judgment, without condemnation. Practice compassion toward your interior life. It's the first step in emotional justice. Well, the first step is documenting. The second step is compassion orienting, like orienting your energy towards compassion as you look at your thoughts and feelings on a page. That's the first step to actually creating what is called stamina and strength. And so I'm going to pause for a second because I feel like I'm talking a lot, Julie, about, I just want to put one thing out there that's really important around emotional justice. So a lot of my friends and colleagues, students, clients have connected with me in the last week because of the crises, because of what's happening, what's going on, and asked me the what do I do questions. I'm telling them, craft your personal liberation project. Notice what you're thinking and you're feeling. Wherever you see a limit in your love, a limit in your capacity to do compassion work, that limit is where you set up shop for your personal liberation. Because that's your sticking point. That is where breakdown gets to happen. Notice that. Take advantage of this situation. This is a situation where we can all grow exponentially. Like so fast and so powerfully if we don't fall victim to the circumstances. Meaning, whatever thoughts and feelings you are generating in reaction to or in response to anything that's being said, anything that's happened, you get to document it for yourself and then examine the insides of your soul with compassion, with grace, with curiosity. Like, organize your energy in curiosity too. Powerful stance to take. And when you do this, what you're actually starting to do is generate stamina. There is such a thing called white fragility. I know that term is probably floating around social media right now. Some people are using it as an insult. I do not use it as an insult. It is just it's a phenomenon. It's a real phenomenon. It's really a crisis in consciousness. White fragility really just means lack of stamina and lack of strength. That's what it means. And it looks like white people getting touchy and fretful and defensive and angry at being critiqued or being questioned, or feeling fretful and anxious and touchy in sight of the feelings and thoughts that one is not accustomed to engaging. That's just a lack of experience. It's a lack of exposure. What I've learned in my research, and for some of y'all who don't know me, I think Julie talked a little bit. I'm going to say that I've got lots of new people on Instagram. I'm a tenured professor at a Research One global institution. That means I'm a classically trained educational anthropologist. I collect women's terror narratives and triumph narratives. I have about 4,000 in my set, and I've done analysis for many years. What I've learned is that Black and brown girls and women in particular have an incredible, on average, have an incredible interior constitution. The resilience, the agility, the perseverance, the stability, the strength. It's astounding, even to me as a Black woman with my own interior constitution. I'm like, wow, how are you still standing? And not only how are you still standing, how are you thriving? Like actually creating a new life after all that terror, after all that violence. So what I'm learning is that for white people in the present moment who would like to participate actively, as allies, as comrades, as friends, as colleagues, as friends, as lovers, as partners, one basic requirement is that you create a personal liberation project that is rooted in emotional justice, that's taking seriously your interior life, seriously, and regarding your interior life lovingly, and graduating the stamina and the strength that is required to deal with difficult, contentious, uncomfortable emotions without making yourself wrong and without making other people wrong for participating in those tensions. So that's the first thing that I would offer. How am I doing, Julie? Is that helpful?
Yeah, wow. I mean, I literally have a page full of notes already. What I have here is this the 10 steps that you were telling me about?
Not the 10 steps, but
Oh, okay.
it's a beginning. It's for
Okay.
sure a beginning.
Okay. So the first thing I have is document, and I love that because if you look at any personal development work, I mean, I just think about AA, for example, you
Yeah.
know, like you have to be honest, like you have to get it all out. You have to purge what's true and not lie to yourself about it. Um, and I know, like, and one of the things you said is being witness to it and like being in conversation about it. I mean, I think that takes a lot of courage and vulnerability. I don't know if it's a have to necessarily, but I think even that first, maybe it is, I don't know, but I think that first step, I mean, I intend to do this and to really establish my own personal liberation project. I never really, you know, I'm always working on myself, but I never really thought about it as a actual, like, contained goal in itself in
Yeah.
this way that I drive, that I'm in ownership of in this way. So this is an amazing perspective.
Yeah. What I would say is one way to look at it is to really think about decolonizing your soul. What that means is if you think about like the concepts from the Matrix, let's say, what's happened with all of us is we've been socialized to think and feel in very particular ways. Those
Mm.
ways have been racialized and gendered.
Mm.
That's something to notice. People who claim girlhood or who claim womanhood or who've been ascribed and assigned that gender and we accept that gender. I'm a cisgendered person, meaning I was assigned the gender of female at birth and I accept it because it's me, it's who I am, it's where I am comfortable. Transsexual and transgender people do something different. They transgress the binary. The point is, our thought systems are racialized and gendered. They're not benign. I think as a Black person thinks. And I don't mean that in a generalized way. There are lots of Black people who think lots of different ways. There's no one way. But I think with a racialized consciousness, which means living in my Black body, every space I enter into, I am automatically checking for critique and threat. Automatically. That's a racialized impulse. It's bred into me. It's born into me. It's buried into me. So with white people who are on the opposite end of this, you have a racialized context in your soul as well. You have a gendered context in your soul as well. You just haven't really interrogated it. You're colonized. Your soul is colonized and structured in a very particular way. And I'll tell you the way. So if you're a white person in America, for example, your soul has been colonized to the extent that you believe in your innocence. You believe in resource. You believe in protection. You believe in availability and openness. You have a sense of optimism and hope. You believe in righteousness and something called justice that's in service to you. You have lots of ways of believing that are racialized. You may not name them that way or notice them that way, but they are ascribed to your racial identity and they inform your thoughts. So to decolonize those thoughts would really just be about asking questions, such as, what would it feel like to walk into a university classroom and be instantly judged as stupid? Just a question. What would it feel like to walk into this high-end store and know that I'll be followed? Just a question. So if you can interrupt the colonization of your own soul with questions, you are off to a great, great start. Wow. And here's the thing, let the questions be astronomically wild. Questions you would never think are real or true. Those are the best questions because those are the questions that will reveal to you the everyday average lived experience of a person of color.
What do we do with those questions? Like instantly when you ask them and I experience them, I have very intense emotions come up. So what do you do with that?
Document. As soon as you feel your intense emotions and then you trace them back to a sponsoring thought, you've hit pay dirt. I mean, you are starting the decolonization process because white supremacist patriarchal ideology depends on unconsciousness. It depends on sleepiness. It depends on laziness. It depends on weakness. The minute you become vigilant and questioning, and you wonder, and you're awake, and you're asking what it is you're feeling, and what thought precedes that or accompanies that feeling, and you write it down and you document it or you talk about it to a trusted accountability partner, you are immediately decolonizing your soul.
Wow. Incredible. So empowering. At what point is it appropriate to start sharing on social media? Like, obviously, this is all very internal, like you said, personal, private. That's what I heard you say. Is it appropriate to share it on social media? How does that work?
I think it could be appropriate for people who are creating diaries. So I've noticed that there are some influencers who are creating diaries, meaning they are doing expose. Like I am sharing my interior work with you because I would like to make myself a model or an example, not because I'd like to make myself a martyr or a champion or get attention. I'm sharing so that I can track my revelations publicly. I think that that could be done. I know that you as a leader and so many other people who are leaders who are watching as an influencer, you want to make it public in some ways to share because leaders are so public in their process and what process looks like. I would wait. It's very messy. That exposure of your interior life, what I've discovered in the crafting of my own personal liberation project, if you would like to decolonize your soul and create emotional justice work in you, craft a personal liberation project to free yourself from the colonization of consciousness, where you are limited in your capacity for compassion, for grace, for love, for patience, for strength, for agility, what you'll find when you crack your heart wide open, Julie, is a mess. You'll find a mess. Most of us are just so messy inside. The results of a personal liberation project are, I call it, so it's health, order, and wholeness. That's the culminating result of a personal liberation project if you see it through. If you don't quit and drop the ball on your personal liberation project, it's health, order, and wholeness. I call it like the how. It's your how. It's the how of your being. It's health. So you're going to open yourself. You're going to crack yourself wide open. You're going to see all of those secret thoughts you think, and all of those feelings that rise up with you sort of remotely. You're going to document. You're going to feel like, oh my gosh, are those really my thoughts? Are those really my prejudices and biases? Are those really, ooh, that doesn't feel good. I don't even know that part of myself. I don't like that part of myself. I don't want that part of myself. There will be an impulse to reject. There will be an impulse to judge. There will be an impulse to shame. There will be an impulse to make yourself wrong. And what you get to do is say, of course, I'm a mess inside. I haven't decolonized yet. So I am coming into uncharted territory. It's the Amazon in here. It's the Amazon. Okay, we're doing exploration and we're doing excavation. So if you can let yourself off the hook in imagining a fantasy that you're already supposed to be done, your humanity isn't done because of your age. Your humanity isn't done because of your education. Your humanity isn't done because of your bank account. Your humanity isn't done because of your credentials and titles. Your humanity is not done at any point. What happens is you evolve in with respect to your investment in your personal liberation. So notice that's a mess. Because it's a mess, I would encourage people to do this privately or semi-privately. If you're asking when is a good time to share and make public, who am I? I am not interested in control. I would say whenever you want. What I would say is create a precedent. I would say to my community, I'm starting a personal liberation project and I am going to decolonize my soul. I'm interested in chartering my uncharted territory. My thoughts and my feelings about racial consciousness, about gender consciousness, about sexuality, about economics, about poverty, about Blackness, about whiteness, about justice. So I'm going to be doing this thing and I'm going to be sharing what I find in my interior life, and it's going to be messy and sometimes unattractive to you, and I might feel threatened and I might feel vulnerable, and that's what it is. And I'm going to do it for 30 days. I would put some parameters around it.
Yeah.
Because really though, it's lifelong work. The average white person, and I'm saying this from a research perspective, the average white person is so fragile that she or he does not have at first the stamina or the strength to make it a lifelong effort, which is what's required for justice to actually be fulfilled. But if you can start in small increments, it's really a worthy endeavor. But if you prepare people for the messiness of it, I think go ahead and make it public. Why not? Just let people know.
Yeah. So setting that context. So what I'm hearing in that is just massive personal responsibility.
Yes.
I mean, that's really what I'm hearing in that. Like radical personal responsibility.
Radical. And one of the things I coach in the Supreme Love Project and our Breakthrough School, which is our flagship program, is the Supreme Love Healing Methodology, which is what we use to actually heal those trauma bonds that come from colonized souls, from racialized and gendered consciousness. That healing methodology depends on radical inclusion. Radical inclusion. I mean, Julie, I'm talking about agreement, approval, appreciation, appropriation of every single thing you find inside of you. Everything. Every single thing. That type of massive inclusivity in your personhood is what is required for you to love like God.
Wow. That right there, what you just said right there. Wow. That's what it takes. I've
That's
never
what
heard it said like that before. That just like, that hit me in my heart.
mm-hmm.
Wow.
God doesn't say to us, you be nice and sweet and perfect and good and then come to me. God does not talk that way to us.
Right.
God says, come. So you as a white person, me as a Black person, everyone watching, we must be Jesus to a child. We must be God to ourselves. Every fragmented, disowned, orphaned, wounded part of you that is rising up in protest right now, rising up in judgment, rising up in shame, rising up in protest or accusation, each part of you has an aspect of your identity for you to examine. And you get to say to every part, give me more.
And I will love you and accept you and embrace you and work through together with you.
100%. Yeah. You do that work with yourself first, literally, with your thoughts and your feelings first, with every fragmented, disowned, orphaned, wounded part of you. When you do that work with yourself first, there's nobody on the planet you can't love.
Oh my gosh, I just got chills. Wow. That is so profound. So I'm curious to know, Jeanine, I was on social media the other day and I saw a person share a post, and it was like a call out type of post, calling out some major influencers and leaders, basically saying like, why haven't you spoken on this? Why are you still running ads? Like, just kind of just not approving of how they were navigating this. And then if you look at the comments, there were people who were saying like, this call out culture is not the way towards unity and the coming together of everybody. And her response was, that's a white fragility response. Mm-hmm. And I don't fully understand all of that. And I would love to know your point of view.
I think that it's all true and all correct. I think that the call out culture can be very damaging and so unyielding. There's a lack of compassion in the call out culture. There's a lack of understanding about trajectory and the trajectory of consciousness, the trajectory of development. There's so much room that we have to evolve. So the call out culture, I think, can be very harsh. I think that that scenario that you just pointed out, where someone is indicting, a leader is indicting a coach and saying, you're bad and you're wrong and you're not doing it right, is within their rights as well. I think another person coming in and saying, that's judgy, stop doing that, that's not hurting, it's actually distracting us from the issue, could be considered right. I think the person saying that's white fragility is also right. I see where there is rightness in all of it. And I see where there's goodness in all of it. There's a method that I practice in the Supreme Law Project that I'd like to offer that I think might be helpful. And I would encourage.
I don't want to distinguish because I want to provide some context for that. Even you're an academic and you're an entrepreneur.
Yes.
An influencer and a leader. So I want to distinguish that for anyone who's new to you.
That's right. Thank you so much. Yes. I'm an academic, I'm a university professor, and I'm an entrepreneur. I am a coach and I run the Supreme Law Project.
Yes.
So an SLP, the Supreme Law Project, is based on my research. So a method that I developed from my research and from my own understanding is something called grounded ascendancy, Julie. What we get to say and notice in order to relieve some of the pressure or tension that attempts to freeze us and hold us back, because that's what we'd like to avoid. We'd like to be spacious and expansive and advancing, moving forward. That's what evolution is about. That's what revolution is about. So if we get stuck in the scenario that you just described with call out culture, you're doing it bad and wrong, and hey, don't talk to them like that. Hey, you're white and fragile. Okay, that's the triangulation that you just described. Mm-hmm. That's a real thing. Yeah. So we can get stuck there and we could freeze there. Yeah. Now, there are several personal liberation projects happening in there. there's touchiness, there's anger, there's fretfulness, there's judgment, there's criticism, there's antagonism. There's all kinds of stuff there that we can liberate ourselves from if we choose to settle in and take up shop and do some examination and work on it. Often we don't. So I do something called grounded ascendancy. And it's based on the concept that there are, in fact, multiple realities in operation always simultaneously. There are matrices of oppression. There are matrices of consciousness. The facetedness of our awareness is unending. So I'm in a reality right now while I'm here with you. You're in a reality right now while you're here with me. One of the things I say is that two people can be occupying the same space and living in completely different worlds. So if I know that that's true, that there are multiple realities in operation all the time, and they're subjective realities. If I say, as a supreme lover, as a person who's practicing personal liberation, as a person who's committed to emotional justice, what I get to say is, I choose to acknowledge all realities. They're all in a state of being. So the call out culture, the person calling out, she's in a reality. The coach who's running ads and is not talking about Black Lives Matter and is not talking about racial unrest and is not talking about state violence is in a reality. The person who is saying, hey, stop calling them out, you don't know why they're doing that, they're in a reality. The person who's saying, hey, you're fragile, you're just touchy and you have no stamina and you don't even want to hear somebody calling you out and criticizing you, that's a reality. There are multiple realities. What I do in grounded ascendancy is I say to myself, I'm going to expand my, this is me decolonizing. I'm expanding my consciousness. I'm graduating, and I'm going to say, all of these realities are right and good and true. I'm just going to say that. I don't need to choose. That's another thing. The poverty and the scarcity in choosing sides necessarily might not be what we need to go for right now. Of course, I will say that I am on Black Lives Matter side. I've chosen a side. I'm on Black Lives Matter. But when I talk about these realities, what I'm saying is I can ground myself in the truth of multiple realities.
Wow.
I can ground myself in the truth of multiple realities. I can make that choice to get access to multiple vantage points. I can imagine the thoughts and feelings of the person who's in call out. I can imagine the thoughts and feelings of the leader, the influencer who doesn't want to see what's going on, who just wants to make money right now, who feels like she's not qualified to say anything, so she's just going to stay in her lane. I can imagine the thoughts and feelings of the Black person or the other person of color who's saying, stop calling them out, or the white person who's saying, stop calling them out, and say, like, what is the limitation or the scaffold of that thought and feeling? I can say all of these are in operation. I'm grounded in all of those. I am feeling into the thoughts and feelings of all of those realities. I'm grounded. I'm experiencing it. And I also, as a supreme lover who is decolonizing, I get to ascend. I get to ascend. I can actually put a command on my own soul to stretch and descend. Now, what does that mean? Yeah. It literally means going above, not to distance myself or isolate myself or create a hierarchy in my consciousness against anyone, to give myself relief, to connect myself to other air, to create some spaciousness after I feel all the feelings on the ground, to lift. And what I do is I shrink all those realities that I've just acknowledged. I get up into heavenly energies. I breathe ethereal air, and I capture ethereal evidence of what God's view is on these situations.
Wow.
I've captured the view of multiple constituents on this grounded sets of realities. I've got that with compassion, with grace, with honor. Now I'd like to graduate. And I'd like to get more. I'd like to go up. I'd like to get higher. And this is what I'd like to do. I'd like to bring myself into the bosom of God. I'd like to see with the mind of God, because I'm capable and I'm available to that. And then what I'd like to see is how those multiple realities that I saw in that triangulation, how do they shrink? And how do they become a part of a tapestry of human experience that stretches far beyond what I can imagine.
Wow.
That supports me in agility,
Mm.
in movement, in flow. It supports muscle. It supports criticality, creativity. It supports strength and stamina in a way that has literally changed my life.
Wow, Jeanine. I could feel all of that in a very distinct way, unlike anything I've ever experienced before.
Good.
And I know this is just scratching the surface because that I'm speechless. That was like so you take that and then you can take action of whatever kind you feel called based on your
Yeah,
vision, right?
yeah, yeah. Because when you can practice building an empathetic core that can connect at a grounded level, like I can create an empathetic core where I can feel what you're feeling. I can get access to your thoughts. I can see and imagine. I can listen and hear. I can make myself a student of your experience. I can humble myself. That is an incredibly sustaining and satisfying energy to
Yeah.
be in. And then once the weight of that and the heaviness of that changes my life, then I can ascend to give myself some space and some relief, get the mind of God, see through the eyes of God. God said, my ways are higher than your ways. My thoughts are higher than your thoughts. So go get them. Go get the thoughts and go get the ways and bring them in, right? We bring heaven to earth. So go get them. And then, yes, you're right, Julie. Then I am able to craft action. I'm able to craft action in relation to that method and that way of being.
Wow. That is so powerful. I'm leading my group call here in 1 minute, but I'm like, oh my God, there's so much here that I want to ask more. But here's what I'll say, Jeanine. Obviously, you are an absolute wealth of resources and knowledge and support and guidance, and I would love to provide our people here on Instagram as well as on Facebook um, an opportunity to connect with you. So, what are some ways that they can receive more support from you?
So you can go to the supremeloveproject.com. Julie, I can give you a free meditation. It's a guided meditation that I would love to share with your community. If they opt in, they can get the gift and use it to actually create some affirmations around their personal liberation and move forward in life
Mm.
purposefully.
Well, I know I definitely want that.
Yeah.
So I'm sure others will as well.
Okay.
Jeanine, you are such a star. Like, this is so, like, what a blessing. What an anointing you have. Like, this is your moment to, you've always been a star in the sky who shines, but this is so, like, your moment. I feel like I can, admittedly, I mean, I've always appreciated and respected you so much, but this is like new levels, and I feel like I can hear everything you're saying in a whole new way. And although I am sad, doesn't even that word doesn't even describe devastated. Doesn't even describe like the witnessing that we're seeing, like that I'm now finally seeing. I'm grateful to be having this conversation with you, and I'm grateful that these conversations are happening around the world. And my prayer is that this continues to facilitate the ascension and the elevation of humanity, and I believe it will.
I totally agree. And I'm along for the ride. Thank you so much for having me.
Really appreciate you, Jeanine. I'll connect with you later and definitely either send me the link or post the link to the meditation in the Facebook, and then this Instagram will go on IGTV as well. So
Okay.
really
Sounds perfect.
appreciate you. Love you so
Love
much.
you. See you
Okay,
soon.
take care.
Bye.